So my name is Elin Chen. I'm one of the career counselor like Wei and Rebecca that you met earlier. I've been with the university, I want to say 10 plus years. I don't want to count the years anymore. That's how long I have been here. So it's also really nice to see some familiar names in the chat. And hopefully I will see some familiar faces later in the networking sessions and also in the 2 days later. Okay. What I also have with me today, of course, is the whole career team. Rebecca in particular is going to help me keep an eye on the chat and help me answer questions in the chat. So also want to give a shout out to Rebecca. And again, if you have questions, as I've seen throughout the day, please don't hesitate to put them in the chat. If it's easier, more convenient for you, also feel free to unmute your mic and speak up, ask your questions. That way, totally fine too. Okay. The other piece I want to say is the good news is I think a lot of the content I'm presenting is probably things you already heard today from Elka, from Wei, from Rebecca. So it may be a little bit of repeated content, but I do think a lot of the content is also worth reinforcing and maybe hear time and time again. And even a lot of the messages Dr. Donaldson also had in his video today. Okay, so hopefully everyone is back in the room. Without further ado, let's get started on your job search essentials. So what I will cover today is some realities about the labor market and job search. We will highlight some different job search methods, and I will share my top 10 tips for job search strategies, and of course, leave some time for you to ask any questions you may have about the job search. But again, if you have questions throughout, please enter them in the chat. Please unmute your mic. You don't need to wait till the very end to ask, okay? Right, okay. So jumping straight into some truth about the labor market again, this might be, a repeated message because I think you already heard from different people today that, your career path is very much nowadays more circular or a winding path compared to your parents or your grandparents. They may have had a career that's more of a straight line. And I think about my dad, I think about my grandpa, and their career was very much a straight line where, my grandpa retired from the military and started his business, and that's what he did for the rest of his life. And my dad actually took over the business, and that's what he did for the rest of his career. So definitely very much a straight line. And because a lot of time the career path is a straight line, it also does a lot of time mean that, there's a lot of employer loyalty. You typically work for one employer for a long period of time, often decades, if with that, a lot of time with one employer, that also means career changes are quite rare. So some of the values being in that kind of labor market is that the values are very predictable and stable. Compared to what a lot of us are facing now, our career path, again, is typically circular or sometimes very messy. And it is now very common for people to actually change employers every 3 to 5 years. And you may have also heard of the stat that on average, people change jobs or careers about 7 times in their lifetime. Okay, so that also normalizes a lot of big career changes. It is very common. So change and learning are now like the constant values that we're dealing with in today's job market. And again, Alka talked a lot about how to take on changes, how to face changes, and how to make use of changes. So what does that mean for your job search? I think it means that, first of all, I think job search is a life skill, right? Because again, we are looking at, changing jobs every 3 to 5 years. So, the period you're in right now, job search mode, you're probably going to do this again, maybe in 3 to 5 years, and again in maybe 3 to 5 years. Okay, so I want to acknowledge that job search is hard work. Okay, so you know, a lot of people might be feeling, oh my God, I just finished school. This is even harder than school, and that might in fact be the case. And I also want to acknowledge that job searching is time consuming. Again, you may have already heard from other people or experienced this yourself, that job search is a full-time job. Okay, so I want to acknowledge those. And some stats back this up. TalentWorks is a consulting recruitment firm, and they provided the stats based on their research in 2017 that it takes about 100, and it's a fairly wide range, 100 to 200 job application to get one offer, right? So again, you need to put together about 100 applications to get an offer. So again, that speaks to the fact that it's hard work and time consuming. And let's not forget, right now we do live a pandemic COVID-19 world, right? So that sometimes does make things even harder. The labor market has changed. There are right now a lot less jobs in a lot of different sectors, but keep in mind a lot of this is temporary. But what doesn't quite change is that to be successful in your job search, you do want to remain determined. You want to maybe be a little bit more creative, flexible, and be a little bit more imaginative than you would normally be. And again, what doesn't change is that you need to have a solid job search process and create solid job applications. Okay. All right, moving on. So I don't know how many people have seen this upside down pyramid of the preferred job search method. So you can see at the very top, there is job ads on the internet, and then followed by job ads on employer website, followed by recruiters, followed by social media networking, followed by direct networking. So hopefully this is not new to most of you, but this again is based on research that people have done, that this is job applicants or candidates preferred job search methods. So I'm curious because this triangle or pyramid has been around forever. Okay, I think when I was a student, I was told about this. So I'm wondering if we can do a quick poll to see if this is still true. Is this still how where you spend most of your time on your job search? So I'm curious. So I'm going to launch the poll, and essentially I want to know, where do you spend most of your time in your job search? Is it applying to jobs online? Is it using a recruiter? Is it networking online, or is it networking in person? Okay, so I'm going to launch the poll and give you a few minutes. Okay, so it looks like it is still true based on this population. Most people do spend most of the time applying to jobs online. 94% of you. 2% or 2 of you said working with recruiters, good for you. A few of you do prefer or spend most of your time networking, whether it's on social media or one-on-one. Again, good for you. Okay, so nice to know. And the reason we show you that pyramid all the time is we also want to show you the flip side. Okay, is that, you know, as candidates, you prefer to apply to jobs, but the reality is.
Finish up the slide. I'm sure she'll forgive me. And the reason she'll forgive me is because I'm the boss. And this slide actually makes a lot of sense for the boss to share. So when I'm hiring, which is what Elin had started to talk about, when a hiring manager, when an employer is looking for someone, we prefer to do the opposite. I'm going to share a dirty secret. I teach people to write resumes all the time, but I don't enjoy reading them when I'm hiring. I would really much rather, if I can, hire someone who I have met, someone who's been introduced to me, somebody who I've done an information interview with. We're going to talk a lot about networking over the next few days, and a great way to meet people in a more one-on-one way, especially while we're online and virtual, it's kind of weird, is doing information interviews. So where I can, I much prefer to hire somebody I know. Anyone want to take a guess why? Want to just throw in the chat, why would I prefer to hire people I know? Saving time, absolutely. Maybe more reliable. I might know that they're reliable, right? Because I've met them before. It's more personal, absolutely. They stood out because I met them. Less risky, you got it. The person who said less risky. Hiring is a risk, right? Because let's say you're in a sales role. I'm putting my trust in you that you're going to maintain the relationships with those customers. And it's very, very important that I feel like I can trust you, right? It's a risk. Hi, Lynn, I'm just finishing your slide.
Yeah.
Yeah, so because hiring is always a risk, and Canadians are super risk averse. You probably noticed Canadians do not love risk. And so when I'm hiring, if I can hire someone who I've already met, I would rather do that. And that's where the power of networking comes in. Elin, I shared my dirty secret that I teach people to write resumes, but I really don't enjoy reading them when I'm hiring. So they're at the bottom of my list.
I don't know where I got cut off, but I was also just saying my partner is hiring right now. And the first thing he did is call all his friends in the company. Do you have anyone to recommend? And he pretty much said, I don't want to have to read 200 resumes. So I'd rather have someone recommend someone to me. Yeah.
And partner for that live story happening right now. So Elin, feel free to push me off the screen. I will.
Okay. So thank you for filling in. Rogers. I have actually never had Zoom just kick me off like that before, but hopefully it won't happen again. So thank you, Jen, for helping everyone understand this pyramid. All right, so I'm actually gonna jump into my top 10 tips for job search. So again, this is probably a repeat of a lot of the information you have already heard today. But I think in terms of a successful job search, just like how you would approach a group project, approach your class assignment, it's good to have a plan, right? And so for your job search, I think that really also means knowing yourself, knowing what you have to offer, knowing your key strengths and weaknesses, right? So I think a lot of what Elka, Wei, and Rebecca cover with you today is going to help you with, you know, getting to know yourself better. And I would say, again, this is a lifelong process. Like Elka shared, like I think someone put in the chat or in the comments that, you know, she's very self-analytical, right? Like, and she does check in with herself almost like every quarter of the year. I think that's really impressive. So if you want to take after her example, I think that's a great exercise. Okay. And I think by learning and knowing more about yourself, it's going to also allow you to have a better focus to your job search. So for example, do you have a job function that you're thinking about? So some of you, it may be very much well aligned with what you study. It may be that you are looking for a marketing role. It may be that you're looking for, you know, to work with data science. It may be that you're looking for a coding or programming position. For some of you, you may be really inspired to work with certain employers. Maybe it's an NGO. I know a lot of our students are interested in working for the government, or a lot of you are interested in working for United Nations. So employer can also sometimes provide you with a target or a focus. And for some of you, it may be actually focusing on the industry. Maybe it's the, you know, sustainability or the green or environmental industry that you're interested in, or it's the manufacturing industry you're interested in. So those are all things for you to think about. And your answers may change over time, but it may also provide you with some clarity in terms of creating your job search plan. The other thing you can add to your job search plan is also SMART goals. Again, I'm sure a lot of you are already familiar with SMART goals. Stands for specific, measurable, attainable or achievable, relevant, and timely or time sensitive, right? So you may also even want to think about setting up some SMART goal for yourself in terms of your job search plan. The other thing I think about having a job search plan is, like I mentioned earlier, job search is time consuming, right? So it's not really something you just do on the side or do it when you feel like it. So you need to plan for it. So that also means setting aside time to do the job search, okay? Which I think is really important in order for you to have a successful job search. And my tip number 2 is, moving a little too fast, leveraging job boards, okay? So a lot of you already shared that, you know, your norm or where you spend a lot of your time is applying to jobs online, which is good. It should be part of your job search. I would say don't just use job boards to do job application. Job boards can also be a great way for you to collect business intelligence. From the job posting you're reviewing, you might get a good sense of the trends that's happening in the industry or in that kind of job function. You may also notice words that keep appearing in all the job posting you're looking at, giving you a sense that those might be really important keywords that you want to pay attention to. And the other thing is make the job boards work for you rather than you spending a lot of time on the job boards. So most job boards will allow you to create a profile. So by you giving them some information about you and what you are looking for, the job boards will actually send you alerts or emails when jobs that are appropriate or fits what you're looking for comes up, they will actually notify you, okay? So that's also something good to do to kind of automate your job search process a little bit. So here is the slide that I know a lot of you are probably looking for or want, because that a lot of time is the number one question I get in one-on-one appointment. Where are all the job boards? Show me all the job boards, okay? So here, take a screenshot, take a picture. It is also available on the Google Drive in the slides. But here I have provided I think a fairly comprehensive list of the most popular job boards and aggregators in Canada. Okay, so again, I think everybody has heard of Indeed. I think they must have a huge marketing budget because of all their ads. But again, Eluta, JobBoom, CareerJet, Nuvo, ZipRecruiter, they're all job aggregators. Talent Egg may be a website worth look at. It's more of a job board rather than job aggregator. And they're more student friendly. And I also do want to give a shout out to our U of T's very own CLNX, right? So that's still also a job board that I would encourage you to take a look at. There are also job postings on there in addition to events, resources. Okay, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about these, but certainly take a screenshot if you are looking for more job boards or job aggregators that you can be using. I also want to remind you of sometimes niche job boards, okay? So all the ones I showed on previous slide, they're kind of, you know, not targeting any specific population. People who are interested in arts can use it. People who are interested in lab work can use it. People who are interested in banking can use it, right? People who have 20 years of experience can use it. People who have 5 years experience can use it. Students can use it. Okay, but there are also some niche job boards out there. So for example, just to give you a sense, for those of you interested in environmental, green jobs, Work Cabin would be one of those niche job boards. And then for people who are interested in non-for-profit jobs, Charity Village is a great website to take a look at. Keep in mind that, nonprofit is also an industry, right? So it's not necessarily pointing out a job function. So on Charity Village, you may find a computer programming position, but you might be working for a charity that's looking to do computer programming, right? But you will also find jobs for accountants. You will also find jobs for social workers. Okay, and it's really nice to see some people are including different websites in the chat. So someone mentioned goodwork.ca for other environmental jobs. So thank you for sharing. And again, if you have other websites to share, please pop it in the chat or in the tool that I'm about to introduce a little later. Work and Culture is another one of those websites, and it's more targeting people interested in arts, culture, and creative jobs. Another tip I would like to provide you is don't forget to check out relevant professional association. So for those of you interested in human resources, HRPA, Human Resources Professional Association. If you click on the link there, you will see their job posting. For people interested in sciences or biotechnology, BioTalent is also another one of those niche job websites that you can take a look at. Okay, so again, it's not comprehensive. I'm not really able to list everything out there that's available. If you're wondering if there is such a website for the area you're interested in, do a Google search, and if you're not able to find anything, reach out to one of us at the Academic Advising and Career Center, and we can always see if we have resources to provide you, okay? But you can see that people are already sharing different websites in the chat, so also take a look there. So thanks everyone for sharing, okay? The other thing about using sometimes these job aggregator, you may notice all the job aggregator are set up in a way there are two boxes you need to fill in, keyword and often location. Okay, so I think in order to really leverage those job boards or job aggregator, you also need to get creative with your keywords. I think it's common for people to put in job titles. So for example, data analyst or accountant, right? Sometimes if you have a company you're interested in working in, you can certainly put in that company and see what comes up, right? And again, I think a lot of students, it's natural for them to put in their discipline or their program of study. So biochemistry, psychology, human resources. Sometimes I would encourage you to also maybe put in a topic or something you studied or something you did a research project on. So I gave an example of food security, for example, right? To see what kind of additional leads that expertise may generate for you. And then I would say also consider using a skill that maybe you have learned. Maybe it's from your courses. It may also be a skill you develop through your own interests and hobbies. So I know a lot of people are interested in photography or graphic design, or, I think nowadays a lot of people are very strong or apt with their social media. So you can try putting in some of those skills into the search and see what kind of leads that generates for you. And then, of course, I think one of the key complaints sometimes I get from students is like, oh, I put in, ArcGIS, but all the results are like manager, director, VP, right? And requires 20 years of experience. So I will also say maybe try entering keywords like junior, entry level, sometimes intern, summer, student, new grad. Maybe some keywords that you can try to see if it helps you generate more friendlier results. Okay. So at this point, I need a water break. So we're going to do a quick activity. So I am going to ask you to actually maybe open up another browser, or you can use your phone if you wish, and maybe try going on a new job board or aggregator that you haven't used before, or that you are kind of maybe eager to try. And I'm actually going to encourage you to maybe try a new keyword or a new combination that you haven't searched by before. Okay. And I would like to know what you what you find. So again, if you want to unmute your mic and share with us what you found, or if you want to type it in the chat, if that's easier for you. So give it a try. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to do this. So I can also bring back the list of job sites.
Elin, I just tried out Jobilico. I'd never heard of that one before I tried it. So I gave it a try with entry-level computer programmer, and it came up with a few options. So I thought that was great.
Cool.
I think your suggestions for looking at student, summer, entry level, all that really makes a big difference. So you don't get so frustrated by finding those jobs that only require tons and tons of experience.
Yeah.
Looks like some people are still navigating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it takes a minute to get to a site and then try it out, figure out where the search is.
So I think for psychology, I had that question from a student before too. I think sometimes psychology presents a challenge because it's still so broad, right? So I would say potentially even is it that, you may want to even try behavior modification, right? If that's the aspect of psychology you're interested in, or is it cognitive that you're interested in? You may need to use more specific keywords.
Mm-hmm. I find Charity Village is also a good site for people in psychology because it's, like you mentioned before, Elin, it's for not-for-profits. And so sometimes people looking for work after a psych degree want work, say as a project coordinator or something like that within some kind of human services related agency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and some people are also saying like putting in child development because maybe that's the aspect of psychology they're really interested in. Yeah.
Yep, excellent.
Use topics from your courses or skills you learn from your courses. So for example, sociology, instead of sociology, maybe try surveying, policy, and similar topic from your courses. Yes. Really great point. Yes, and Google has a job board too. Yeah. Okay. So hopefully you guys all found something that, piqued your interest or gave you some additional options to explore. So when I was creating these slides, I tried. So what I tried was sociology, because that's what I study in my undergrad. And I decided to combine it with consulting. Okay. And I actually found things. I didn't think I would find things, but I found things. I found ethnographer as a job. And I also found workplace intelligence, strategy consulting, senior director as a job. Okay. So what I didn't do with those keywords is I didn't really indicate experience level. So, so to be completely honest, these two jobs are not really, undergrad appropriate. I believe both, when I review the job posting, they both require a PhD in sociology or other social sciences discipline, okay? But what that was also able to tell me is if these are the jobs I really want to do in the future, then maybe I do need to consider further education. So I thought it was still a good way to collect information or collect intelligence about my career planning if I really want to go into consulting. I also tried another set of keywords. I tried TikTok and junior. And I was able to come up with these two jobs: social media coordinator for Advoc Digital Inc. in Toronto, which I believe is a smaller advertising agency, and for Rona, social media specialist. Okay, so if social media is your thing, you can also consider these positions. Okay, so these are some of the things I found that I thought was interesting that I wanted to share with you guys. Hopefully you guys also found something interesting, something you might want to apply for, right? Because these jobs are live, right? And hopefully, a lot of our session tomorrow is going to actually cover the ins and outs of your resume, of your cover letter. So hopefully by the end of Get Hired, you will have your application ready to go for maybe some of the interesting positions you found today. Okay, so if you don't have any more questions for now, I'm going to move on into my next tip, which I already kind of gave a preview to, is that, in order, again, to have a successful job search, you do need to update your tools, your self-marketing tools in this case. So your self-marketing tool, or in your self-marketing toolkit, I really see, there's a place for your resume, cover letter, your LinkedIn profile. You should, of course, also have an elevator pitch and, practice your interview skills. So a lot of these topics we are going to cover throughout the 3 days that we're spending at Get Hired. But if you do feel like there is one area that you always are not sure about, where you think you want to, get more information, for sure, ANCC offers sessions on all these topics, and we also offer one-on-one support if you want to talk about these things individually. Okay. All right. Moving on to some interesting statistics. So I found from Glassdoor that they, through their research, they found that on average, a corporate job attracts about 250 resumes. And out of those 250 resumes, about 4 to 6 of them will get interviewed. And of course, usually out of the 4 to 6, one of them will get the job offer. Okay, so what does that really mean for you? That again goes to show the point that, your resume, your cover letter, your job search toolkit really should be targeted. Okay, and the way you make it targeted is that you want to base it on a T analysis. T analysis, not sure how to do one. Make sure you come out and show up and pay attention to my colleague Derek's presentation tomorrow, because he's going to go through T analysis in quite a bit of depth. Okay, so that would be a great exercise for you to go through. The other thing you want to make sure that all the tools in your toolkit is that it's consistent with your branding, that everything looks like they're part of the package. So I think that sometimes can be as simple as making sure your name is consistent. I think sometimes people have a given name, right? Name their birth name, but they also may have a preferred name, right? Sometimes one is in bracket, sometimes one is kind of interpreted as the middle name. Whatever you choose it to be, just do it consistently. So that means, the heading or the header on your resume is the same as the header on your cover letter. The name you also use is the same on your email. It's also the same on your email signature. Okay, and it's also the same on your LinkedIn profile. So, when you present it as a package, your branding is obvious. It's also memorable, and there's no confusion between, am I looking at the same person? Is this the same person that I just looked at on LinkedIn? And again, I think Derek is going to cover this in a lot more depth throughout all your self-marketing tools, documents. You want to make sure that they're impactful. And the way to do that, of course, is to use strong action words. And whenever you can, to use numbers, quantify whenever you can, use percentages, use numbers to help you showcase your accomplishment. But again, a lot more detail on these things tomorrow from Derek. The other thing that people a lot of time will be wondering about is the applicant tracking system, or the ATS. Okay, so again, you may have already heard that for a lot of larger scale employers, before your resume or before your application reaches a human being, it has to go through a machine, right? And you have to beat the machine in order to get to the human person to read it. So what you want to try to do again is to make sure that you align your resume with keywords found on the job posting, again, through the T-analysis exercise. Okay, I once did hear a person try to trick the machine by having all sorts of keywords on the page, but making the color white so it doesn't show up to the human eye, but the machine can read it. I think, again, I don't know if it actually happened. It's almost like an urban myth. And I don't know if that's necessarily a strategy I would recommend, okay? I think, again, you wanna be also mindful of the keywords you're using. It's not just putting out, all the popular keywords out there. The other thing that I heard from another recruiter, her recommendation is to match your job title. So when she was speaking to us, she was saying, for example, Alka this morning, I think instead of calling human resources, I think at EA, they call it people management or people something. I can't remember the exact title, but let's say if you work at EA and you work in people management, but you're now applying to another job in human resources. Her recommendation is that instead of calling yourself manager in people management, you may want to say manager human resources, because that's a better match to the new position you are now applying to. So I think for you guys, for students, I see this happening quite often with a lot of volunteer positions. Okay, so a lot of times, first of all, the first thing I see is that in volunteer positions, a lot of students don't even give themselves a title. Okay, they will just say, blah, 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 organization, right? And then I often have to ask, well, are you a volunteer? What did you do, right? So you may want to put volunteer. So if what you did is, design, help them with design, you may put volunteer web designer or volunteer web developer. Okay, where if you help them with fundraising, again, you can put volunteer fundraising assistant. Okay, and in the chat, I see that Derek put the trick of white words on your resume is to trick the ATS. That has been around for more than 10 years. Recruiters are well aware and can program the system to see the words. Yeah, so true. So again, I don't think I recommend that strategy. Okay, so going back to the point about matching your job title, I think it's also about you giving yourself credit to a lot of volunteer work you have done, right? So again, rather than just calling yourself volunteer, maybe give something a little bit more specific to showcase what you did as a volunteer. The other recommendation is to skip fancy formatting. ATS are becoming more sophisticated, but the reality is a lot of them still only kind of read information from top to bottom, from left to right. Okay, so one formatting that a lot of recruiters talked about is the column format. Sometimes it's not very friendly to a lot of ATS, and therefore your resume may not get read the same way that you want it to be read. So potentially consider not using the column format. And a lot of time, again, sometimes I know nowadays is somewhat popular or a bit of a trend to use some kind of, bar or some kind of scale to show your skill proficiency. So again, some ATS don't read that very well and actually gets confused by designs like that. Okay, so just some things to keep in mind, especially if you know you are applying to a lot of bigger or employer organizations that you know for sure uses the ATS. So instead, we really want to encourage you to bypass the ATS if you can. And of course, you do that by networking. Okay, so again, I'm sure all of you have already heard about how important networking is, and why we should do it. I think when Jen covered the pyramid in the beginning, right? Again, it really speaks to why it's essential for you to network as part of your job search strategy. So networking, again, is the process of developing connections and building relationships. So when I talk about networking, I do want to emphasize that it's long-term. Networking is not just something you do once and that's it. Okay, it is about building relationship. Networking to me is also about sharing. It's not just about you asking questions, right? I think a lot of people sometimes feel awkward or feel uncomfortable with networking because they feel networking right now feels to them like a one-way street, but it should be mutually beneficial. So how you make it mutually beneficial is by showing genuine interest and curiosity about the people you're talking to, right? So a very common hurdle or mental block that we hear from students is, I don't know anybody, okay, so who do I network with? And the truth is always, you know more people than you think. Okay, and it's really important to start somewhere. And usually networking spreads kind of like wildfire. Okay, you start somewhere and then you spread the word. And the idea is also to keep in mind that people generally want to help. People like to talk, usually likes to help people, wants to talk to people. But there are also a couple of things you can do to increase the chances that people will say yes to networking with you, to fulfilling your request. So one is to actually make the request specific and fulfillable. Okay, so what I mean by that is when you reach out to people, right, you may want to tell them, I'm really curious and I would like to know more about your career path. Or I would like to know more about the master program you did, or I would like to know more about the company you work at, rather than just, oh, I need help with my job search. Can you help me? Okay. Sometimes when it's so broad, people are not sure if they can fulfill your request. Then they're more likely to maybe ignore. They're thinking, oh, I don't know how to answer this right now, so they might put it off and then forget about it. Okay. So make it specific and make it easy for them to say yes to you. And of course, you also want to personalize your note, right? Think about, how many times have you received something in your own email inbox? And so for me personally, whenever I see, hey, you, or hi, right? Or to whom it may concern, that's my favorite, not. To whom it may concern, generally my reaction is, it doesn't concern me. I'm not going to read this. Okay. But versus when it says, hi, Yulin, or dear Yulin, or hi, Miss Chan, or, I'm more likely to pay attention and actually read through the email and maybe, answer your request. Okay, so again, keep that in mind. And then the other thing is try to find people that you have something in common with or have some kind of common ground. And that makes a great population, right? Because you all graduated or you all went to the same school. Some of you may have even studied the same program, share the same professors, right? So that common ground will also make it easy for people to say yes to you, okay? And you actually have a great opportunity in a few hours to connect with alums. So please do take advantage of the opportunity later on today. The other mental block we sometimes hear from people is, I don't know how to network because I don't know how to market myself. right? And again, it is awkward to think about, oh, I have to go talk to a stranger and market myself. So I encourage you to think a bit more as having a conversation with someone. You don't need to think of it as, oh, I need to go market or promote or sell something to this person, right? If you are good at that, some people are natural salespeople, then sure, you can frame it that way. But for most, the pressure to sell is not, something people enjoy, right? So for those, I would just encourage you to think about it as a conversation. Think about it as getting to know a person and building a relationship. And usually, most of the time, you're probably doing more listening than talking. Okay. And for those of you who prefer a bit more structure, you can also think of networking or a building block to networking as informational interviews. So informational interviews is usually when you reach out to people to ask for information. That's why we call it information interviews. So here are some tips I would like to share with you guys. So before you start your information interview, certainly you want to find the people, right? You want to agree on the time, place, and duration of the meeting. These days, some of that is taken out of the equation for you. You're probably going to meet virtually. You have the choice of Zoom and maybe Teams. But still, you want to come to an agreement. Okay, you also want to make sure you do some homework. So that means researching the person, researching the organization, and maybe even learning a little bit about the industry, right? Because that will help you do the next step, which is to have thoughtful questions. Okay, you certainly don't want to ask questions that you can easily find the answers to by Googling it, right? You want to ask questions that are not easily found, right? So research will help you come up with really good questions. Again, for those of you who need a bit more structure, we do recommend coming up with a written interview guide, right? So you may want to write out that, you're going to first introduce yourself, and here are a few key points that you want to make sure you include in your introduction. And then you're going to move into questions about the person, and then move into questions about the organization, and maybe end it with maybe one question about the industry. Okay. And even though most of the informational interview you might be doing nowadays are virtual, please do still dress appropriately. Okay. Still a good reminder to have. And of course, during your information interview, you want to make sure you're friendly and professional. You want to share your agenda with the and you follow your gut. Do acknowledge that you may need to adapt or change as necessary. You may also need to, take out some questions because you may have ran out of time. I do think it's important to respect the person you are talking to and respect their time. So if it's a 30-minute interview, if you have 2 questions left and it's already 30 minutes, you may want to ask them if it's okay for you to ask your remaining question. Okay. And certainly you want to close with gratitude, really thanking them for their time, for the thought and effort they put into their answers. And after, it would be a really nice gesture to certainly send them a thank you card or email. Okay. And in the thank you email and card, I would say, certainly thank them because that's the purpose, but it may also, want to include things that allows for relationship building, right? You may want to ask them, may I, update you in the future about, how I am doing in my career development, or can I email you in the future if I have more questions? Okay, so again, kind of setting up that foundation for long-term relationship building. Okay. All right. So again, I think some of these, in terms of where to look for people, have already been covered. I think Wei already talked about 10,000 coffees, and some of you already set up profiles. So that's really great to see. LinkedIn, as you may already know, again, is a great tool for networking, a great place for finding people. And my colleague Beyond will also be presenting it in more detail in the future in Get Hired. So if you're interested in finding out more about LinkedIn, definitely make sure you attend his session. Again, professional association often have directories. And I think sometimes that's a tool that a lot of people may not think of to use to look for contacts. Okay, so for example, sometimes, networking, we definitely say start small, start with the people around you, but it is also often true that, maybe you're interested in a career where nobody in your family, right? I recently had someone tell me, everyone in my family works in banking, but I want to go into urban planning, right? So there is no connection for me, right? So what we were able to do is we were able to go on to the Ontario Planner Institute, and they actually had a public directory of all the planners in Ontario. Okay, so that kind of gave him an idea of potential people he can reach out to. Okay, so certainly I think that's a place to look for a lot of people. And of course, make sure you check CLNX regularly, because even though you may think because we're in a pandemic, not much is happening, it's actually not true. A lot of things are still happening, just virtually. So we are still having employer info session. We still have career events, right? Even Reagan this morning from Alumni and Development, they are still also having events. It's just that everything is moving on to virtual. But virtual still provides the opportunity and the space for you to network. And of course, you can also create your own opportunities, right? For some people, that means, striking a conversation with a stranger. Some common places we used to talk about would be like at the hair salon, but right now that's closed, that's shut down. But still, I think there's, again, still virtual opportunities to do meetups, right? So keep an eye on different opportunities to network. Okay, so coming back to some of my tips about job search. Another tip is to utilize recruiters or staffing agencies, okay? So recruiters or staffing agencies typically work for the employers. And employers may choose to hire them and of course pay them, because they may have a position that they have a hard time filling themselves, or they might be too busy focusing on working on their product, so they don't have time to spend on hiring, right? So they may choose to hire a recruiter or a staff agency to do the hiring. So for example, hiring a programmer with a specific language, or sometimes an employer may also pick a staffing agency because they have a large volume, okay? So I think, for example, recently, I think the Ontario government hired a recruitment agency to, find people for all the vaccination clinics that they're running, high volume roles, okay? So how you may utilize recruiters is certainly, we included a link where you can use the Association of Canadian Search, Employment and Staffing Services. They have a directory of all the recruitment agencies in Canada, and you can location. You can also search by function, job function. So for example, certain recruitment agency may specialize on hiring for technical roles, or hiring for lab roles, or hiring for accounting positions. And some of them, of course, also have different experience level they focus on. So some of them are called executive search. So those are probably generally the C suites, right? They might be looking for CEO, CMO, CFO, CTO. So those may not be appropriate for us, but there are also ones that are more focused again on entry level. And those might be some of the ones that you want to consider working with. And again, some of them may focus on specific industry, some focus on healthcare, some focus on the public government sector. Okay, so one thing we always want to remind students is that recruiters make their money by filling the need for the employer. So they are paid by the employer. At no point should a recruiter be charging you or asking you for money. If they are asking you for money or saying that they need to charge you for finding you a job, then I would say that's not a legitimate recruiter you want to be working with. Okay, so just want to put that out there and make sure people understand. So they do make money, but usually it's the employer who pays them. Okay, because they're saving the employer a lot of time and effort in doing the hiring. So what you can do to help the recruiter help you is certainly by having a more of a focus. Okay, so again, generally, if you can tell the recruiter what kind of position you're looking for, well, what kind of skills and strengths you can offer, it will allow the recruiter to better support you in finding something that you want to do. A lot of time, the recruiter, before they even decide to work with you, they may also ask for a copy of your resume, because sometimes they are also trying to assess your readiness. Okay. But sometimes you can also use recruiters because they may know, especially if they specialize in a certain industry, they may also know industry standards and trends that they can share with you and help you further tailor your cover letter and your resume. And of course, when you work with recruiter, you also want to be confident. You want to, again, be clear about what you have to offer rather than, oh, I don't know what I can do. Right? So make sure that you're well prepared, focused, and confident. So the recruiters also feel confident about promoting you to a prospective employer. All right. Now, my next tip is polish your online presence. Okay, so again, I mentioned this already earlier. Your online presence should also be aligned or consistent with your overall branding, right? So if I get your resume and I put in the name I see on your resume on Google, what am I going to find? Ideally, hopefully, LinkedIn is going to be one of the top search results I see if I Google you. Okay, if not, that's okay, but make sure you check what are the top search results. Maybe you are highlighted or mentioned in one of the University of Toronto articles about research that you've been part of, or some cool community initiative that you are a part of. That's also really good to see. Or maybe your blog comes as one of the top search results, right? Or your Twitter account, right? Whatever it may be, think about the impression that you are giving to someone who might be trying to learn more about you. You may also want to use hashtags to help you, right? So again, you may want to hashtag that you are job searching or open for work on LinkedIn, right? This way, recruiters who are searching for those hashtags may also then come across your profile or come across your Twitter account. And again, a 2016 employer survey found that over 50% of recruiters said that social media did change their hiring or their recruiting results. So your online presence do have an impact on your job search success. And some of the things that recruiters said that they use to check candidates, and this is Facebook, they're also checking blogs, Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat, and these days probably also TikTok. Okay. And then some of the things recruiter really encourage people to avoid on their online presence, definitely typos, provocative or inappropriate content. You really don't want to have pictures involving drugs and alcohol where what could be misinterpreted as drugs and alcohol, right? And you certainly don't want to be caught bad-mouthing previous employers or, professors. So be cautious about what you're sharing online, and certainly no bigoted content relating to race, religion, gender. And also be careful with oversharing, and sometimes even selfies can be misinterpreted as unprofessional. Okay. All right, one of the last tips is also to consider volunteering, right? So again, one of the top challenges we hear from students is that sometimes they don't feel they have relevant experience or they have gaps. So volunteering is often a great way to gain relevant experience or to fill in those gaps. Employer also, in general, look at volunteering very favorably. It's often interpreted as you showing commitment, showing altruism, showing a positive mindset. And volunteering, again, is also a great way to naturally build and expand your network and also to gain references, right? So another challenge I often hear from students is, oh, I got an interview, but they need 3 references, but I only have 2, right? So sometimes volunteering, your supervisor at your volunteer place could be a great 3rd reference to add to your list of references. So again, Volunteer Toronto is a great place to look. There are both long-term and short-term, right? Some volunteering may just be a day or a week versus other volunteering, they might be looking for a commitment for a year, but you're really volunteering once a week or twice a month, okay? Again, CLNX, not only does it have pay job postings, it also does have volunteer postings, so also take a look there. And again, I want to remind you of professional association. A lot of times they may have annual conferences or events. Again, most of them may have moved online, but they may still need support, even virtually. Right. So a lot of time they have volunteer positions. Again, it may be more one-off or one-day commitments, but it's still a great way to volunteer and to use it as a way to expand your network. Lastly, you may also want to create your own opportunities, right? So for those of you that were kind of in my mind map breakout room during Wei and Rebecca's session, you all kind of had a problem that you are eager to solve or population you are keen to help, right? So that may mean that you want to target certain employer or certain organization and pitch to them that, I am really keen to run a EDI workshop, or I really want to do a fundraising campaign for this, right? Where I want to build an app to make this easier for this population, okay? And for those of you who are entrepreneurial, certainly entrepreneurship is another thing to consider in terms of, kind of building your own career. And there is actually a lot of financial and, knowledge support provided by the government. You may have heard things like summer company offered, where the government actually gives you money and helps you, teaches you how to write a business plan, how to pitch it to potential investors, how to do bookkeeping and accounting for your small business. So this is another idea to consider in your job search. I really think job search is not just about doing one thing. It's really about using a variety of methods. So hopefully I introduced you to some different ideas today. And I really want you to maybe spend some time trying different things out and figure out what works for you, okay? And I also want to remind you that it is important to set a routine. Okay, so we already talked about, job search being a full-time job, 9 to 5. Maybe for you, it's more 10 to 6 or whatever it may be. But having a routine is going to be important in success in your job search. I think it's also really important to be a good manager or a good friend to yourself. I think, again, it was Elka who talked about in terms of failure, right? How would you talk to your friend about if you didn't get the job you wanted, or if you didn't, you put out 2 applications and didn't hear back yet, right? So give yourself that pep talk, give yourself rewards. If you, met your goal. I often talk about, when I was job searching, I always share this story. I distinctly remember that I applied to 48 jobs before I got my first interview. So when I got my first interview, I went out and bought myself something really nice, right? So that was my reward. But that also speaks to my other point about keeping track. I knew it was 48 jobs because I actually had an Excel spreadsheet where I kept track of every single job I applied to, okay? And also remember that you don't need to do this alone, okay? Job search, again, is hard, can get very lonely, but the career team is here to support you. You also have, 150 others here that are probably going through the same thing you are going through. So make sure to ask for help and ask for support when you need it, okay? So lastly, I just want to lay out some next steps for you to consider. So I think, again, a great next step could be spending some time getting to know yourselves, getting to know employers and clarifying your focus. For some of you, you may want to spend a little bit more time playing with those job boards, using different keywords and seeing what works the best for you and generates the best results for you. For some of you, it may be spending time updating your tools, and I would say getting feedback on your tools is also really important. So getting a friend to read over your resume, booking a resume or LinkedIn profile critique with one of us at the Academic Advising and Career Center, networking, conducting information interviews, maybe reaching out to a recruiter, and definitely Googling yourself and polishing your online presence, and even considering volunteering, I think are all some very doable things that you can accomplish in the near future. And of course, if you put a check mark next to any of these, I hope you go out and buy yourself a giant ice cream cone, or actually buy yourself a tub, okay? Because I think you deserve it. All right. Lastly, I want to do a pitch for AACC's 21-day job search bootcamp that we are actually going to be starting next Monday, okay? So for those of you who may have gone through the content with me today and are thinking, oh, these are things I would like to do, but things that you need a little bit of motivation, a little bit of structure, I encourage you to join me in a 21-day job search bootcamp where we are going to be meeting for 21 days. Okay, it's about half an hour to an hour commitment every day. And we are going to be going through some of these things that I talked about in today's presentation, but we're going to break it down into daily doable tasks. Okay, so if you're interested, please log on to CLNX. You can get more information and sign up there. I believe I have 3 minutes to spare in my time, so happy to answer any last minute questions before I turn it back to Jen and Florence.